The diner lay in stillness until Emily's ears caught the sharp sting of cruel laughter. 3 teenagers mocked an elderly man clad in a tattered leather biker jacket. His shaking hands clutched a coffee cup, a silent taunt echoing in his mind. "Are you too old to ride now, Grandpa?" One smiled slyly. Emily's heart raced. She understood that getting involved could jeopardize her position, yet an inner force compelled her to act. "That is enough," she declared, her voice unwavering. A silence enveloped the scene, followed by a deep, resonant sound. The earth trembled beneath me. Beams of light cut through the darkness. A multitude of bikers surged onto the street. The teenagers spun around, their expressions paling dramatically. As their leader lifted his helmet, a face emerged that left everyone momentarily breathless. Before we dive in, please give this video a thumbs up and let us know your location in the comments. Your support enables us to share even more impactful narratives. Let us commence. The diner was infused with the aroma of fresh coffee and warm pancakes, yet the atmosphere crackled with an icy tension. Emily polished the counter, casting a furtive look at the old man seated by himself in the corner booth. His leather biker jacket bore the marks of time, the patches frayed from countless journeys on the open road. His hands quivered ever so slightly as he raised his coffee cup, gazing down at the table as if he were lost in another world. The bell above the door chimed as 3 teenagers entered, their laughter echoing through the space. Emily observed how their gazes fixated on the elderly gentleman. A heaviness settled in her gut. There was an unsettling feeling in the air. "Observe this fellow," one of them whispered just audibly enough to catch attention. "Still attempting to maintain that tough biker persona, are we?" Another one scoffed, advancing toward the booth. Emily's hold on the towel in her hand grew firmer. The elderly gentleman remained silent. He gazed intently at his coffee, his fingers gripping the cup with increasing intensity. The adolescents chuckled softly. "I bet he doesn't even ride anymore," the tallest one remarked, giving his friend a playful nudge. "What transpired, elder? Feeling apprehensive about returning to the road?" Emily sensed a surge of fury swell within her. She had witnessed this scenario previously, the manner in which individuals believed they could prey on someone who appeared defenseless. Yet, this individual was far more than merely an elderly gentleman. He exuded a certain aura, a subtle power hidden beneath the lines of age and worn leather. The diner sat in a state of quiet solitude. The remaining customers fell into a hush, their anticipation palpable as they awaited the unfolding events. Emily cast a sidelong look at her manager, who lingered by the kitchen, feigning indifference. She was aware that if she entered, trouble could follow. Yet, she found herself unable to remain quiet. With a steadying breath, she emerged from her place behind the counter. "That is sufficient," she stated with conviction. The teens spun around, taken aback. "Beg your pardon?" The tallest one let out a derisive laugh. "You heard me," Emily said, her voice unwavering. "Let him be." The elderly gentleman finally raised his gaze. His eyes held a weariness, yet beneath that surface lay an enigmatic depth, elusive and profound. The tallest teenager chuckled heartily. "Is this for real at this moment? We are simply having a conversation." "No," Emily replied. "You are attempting to bring shame to someone who has done nothing wrong to you. That will not occur in this place." In that brief instant, everything fell quiet. The onlookers were now fixated, eager to witness the next move of the teenagers. The head of the group let out an exasperated sigh. He muttered dismissively, "This location is quite unappealing, to say the least." He pivoted and made his way to the door, his companions trailing closely behind. Emily exhaled, unaware that she had been holding her breath. She glanced over her shoulder at the elderly man. "Is everything all right, sir?" He observed her intently for a prolonged moment before giving a slow nod. "I've encountered worse," he remarked, his voice gritty yet unwavering. Emily smiled, yet before she could utter a word, the bell above the door chimed once more. A man in a leather jacket entered first, followed by another, and then 5 more joined the scene. Emily felt a sudden twist in her stomach as a realization dawned on her. The emblems on their jackets were identical to the one worn by the elderly gentleman. Emily's heart raced as additional figures entered the room. Every individual donned a leather jacket, adorned with the identical weathered emblem sewn onto the back. Their boots echoed on the tiled floor as they entered with a calm assurance, their eyes sweeping across the room. The diner, once buzzing with the sharp edges of teenage mockery, now hung thick in the air with an unarticulated weight. The elderly gentleman in the booth finally sat up straight, his grip on the coffee cup relaxing. He cast a look at the newcomers, and a deliberate nod exchanged between him and the first man who had stepped inside. Emily gulped. She was uncertain whether she had merely assisted someone in need of protection, or if she had unwittingly become involved in a much larger situation than she had anticipated. A tall man, his beard streaked with gray, made his way to the old man's table, embodying the authority of the group's leader. His voice carried a quiet strength. "You ought to have reached out to us, brother." The elderly gentleman let out a sigh and subtly shook his head, wishing to avoid any conflict. Emily remained motionless behind the counter, observing the exchange unfold. The other men took their places in nearby booths, their mere presence exuding authority, even without a word spoken. These were more than mere bikers. There was an underlying essence, a quality in the way they held themselves, in the instinctive care they showed for one another. The leader directed his attention to Emily. She felt a tightness in her chest, uncertain of his forthcoming words. "You defended him?" She nodded, her voice caught in her throat. His expression eased just a touch. "That requires a lot of courage." Emily sensed the gaze of every patron in the diner upon her. She felt her manager's gaze from the kitchen, likely questioning whether she had just jeopardized the restaurant. Yet, beneath the surface, she felt no remorse for her actions. "I simply acted according to my principles," she stated, maintaining a calm tone. A handful of the bikers shared knowing looks. The leader wore a sly grin. Few would rise to the occasion. Many chose to avert their gaze. Emily felt a constriction in her throat. She had witnessed it previously, individuals turning a blind eye to matters they preferred to avoid, opting for silence instead of taking a stand. Her upbringing had been distinct. The elderly gentleman finally uttered another word, his tone now more subdued. "In the past, we journeyed side by side. We supported one another." The leader nodded, confirming that nothing has changed. "That is the reason for our presence." Emily frowned. "Were you aware of their impending arrival?" The elderly gentleman let out a dry chuckle. "There was no necessity. They consistently arrive at the crucial moments." At that moment, the bell above the door chimed once more. Emily turned, anticipating the arrival of additional bikers. Instead, she noticed the three teenagers from earlier, lingering outside, motionless. Their expressions had shed the arrogance they once bore. It was evident they had not anticipated this outcome. A younger man adorned with tattoos sprawled in his seat, a smirk playing on his lips. It seems that an important lesson has been learned about underestimating the wrong individual. The leader took a deep breath and faced the elderly figure. "Are you asking us to take care of this?" Emily felt her breath catch. She was uncertain about what handling entailed in this scenario, yet an instinct warned her that these men were not the type to overlook disrespect. The elderly gentleman cast a glance at Emily before slowly shaking his head. "Unnecessary. She has taken care of it already." Emily's heart raced as the teenagers lingered for a moment, then swiftly turned and vanished into the darkness. They had made their decision, yet an unsettling feeling whispered to her that this was just the beginning. Emily let out a sigh, becoming aware that she had been unconsciously holding her breath. The atmosphere in the diner changed, yet it remained palpable. The bikers stayed firmly in their seats, exuding a commanding presence, yet an unspoken tension lingered in the atmosphere. It transcended the concerns of just the teenagers. A deeper current was at play, something that remained beyond Emily's grasp. The elderly gentleman raised his coffee cup once more, savoring a deliberate sip as though the world around him remained unchanged. His hands were steady now, The biker leader rested against the counter, observing Emily intently. "Do you have a name?" he inquired. She paused, contemplating her response. "Emily," he acknowledged with a nod. "Emily, are you familiar with his identity?" He inclined his head in the direction of the elderly gentleman. Emily cast a quick look at the biker before turning her attention back to the elderly man she had stood up for. His face bore the marks of a life well lived, while his eyes held an enigmatic depth that eluded her understanding. He had entered alone, appearing as just another overlooked figure in search of a comforting meal. But now, encircled by men who held him in high regard, he exuded an entirely different presence. Emily spoke with caution, expressing her belief that he did not deserve such treatment. The elderly gentleman let out a gentle chuckle, a smile playing on his lips as he shook his head in amusement. The leader smirked, acknowledging her strength with a hint of admiration. It was clear as day. He turned his gaze towards Emily. "You just defended a man who once guided one of the most formidable alliances on the highway." Emily opened her eyes wide. "Fraternity?" The leader's expression shifted subtly, hinting at a distant memory resurfacing. "A bond unlike any other. A collective of men who stand by one another through thick and thin, embodying a loyalty that eludes the comprehension of many." Emily surveyed the other bikers with a keen eye. They were not merely here for a casual visit. They had arrived with intention, carrying a connection that transcended mere friendship. The elderly gentleman let out a weary breath. That was quite a while back. The leader dismissed the notion with a shake of his head. "Certain things remain constant, my brother." Emily abruptly sensed the gravity of the situation bearing down on her. She believed she was aiding an elderly man who was being mistreated, but it soon became evident that she had entered a situation much more complex. At last, one of the other bikers, a man marked by deep scars on his knuckles, broke the silence. "Do you still ride?" The elderly gentleman wore a smile, yet it failed to illuminate his eyes. "Not as I once did." The leader took a deep breath, then redirected his attention to Emily. "Your actions tonight were commendable." Emily folded her arms across her chest. "I took the action that was necessary." The leader's smirk reappeared, yet there was an unmistakable depth of understanding in his gaze. "You seem to have missed the mark there. Many individuals might have chosen to turn a blind eye. You certainly did not." Emily cast her eyes toward the door. The youths had yet to come back. Yet, she remained in a state of unease. "Will they return?" The leader let out a soft laugh. "This evening is not suitable. Not after what they witnessed." She swallowed, caught in a moment of uncertainty about whether that brought her relief or added to her discomfort. The elderly gentleman finally set his coffee cup aside. "The hour is quite advanced. It's time for me to take my leave." Emily paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. "Do you really think so?" The leader inclined his head in his direction. "He won't be going by himself." Emily observed the bikers as they gradually rose, their presence still significant, yet no longer exuding an air of menace. It had become evident at this point. They arrived for him, ensuring his safety, a gentle reminder that he was still remembered. The elderly gentleman cast a final look at Emily. "Thank you very much." She smiled, yet a myriad of questions lingered in her mind. At any moment, as the men exited the diner, their boots thudding against the floor, Emily sensed a change stirring within her. She was completely unaware of the role she had just stepped into. Yet, an instinct whispered to her that this was merely the start. Emily observed the group of bikers guiding the elderly man out into the open. Their movements flowed together seamlessly, as though they had rehearsed this countless times prior. The low growl of motorcycles idling just outside the parking lot reverberated through the ground, a constant reminder of the strength these riders possessed. After a brief pause, she emerged from behind the counter, her hands being wiped clean on her apron. Her curiosity was insatiable, seeking clarity. She had stood up for a man she thought was merely another overlooked individual, but now it was evident he was far from ordinary. The elderly gentleman pivoted to face her, his features softly lit by the faint neon radiance of the diner sign. For an instant, the passage of time appeared to dissolve, uncovering an individual who had once embodied so much more than just a solitary figure in a booth with a cup of coffee. Emily paused, contemplating her words before finally breaking the silence. "Your name has eluded me thus far." He observed her intently for a brief moment before offering his reply. "Jack." She nodded, allowing the name to linger in her thoughts. It was a perfect fit for him. Powerful, uncomplicated, weathered by the passage of time. The biker leader rested against his motorcycle, exuding an air of confidence and authority. His keen eyes remained locked on Emily. "It's important for you to be aware, Emily. Your actions this evening will linger in the minds of many." Her brow furrowed in discontent. "I acted in accordance with my principles." He wore a sly grin. "And that is precisely why it holds significance." Jack let out a breath, his hands moving together in a futile attempt to ward off a chill that seemed to exist solely for him. "It feels like ages since someone has truly supported me." Emily folded her arms across her chest. "I find that difficult to accept." A biker, his beard flecked with silver and his face etched with deep lines, let out a chuckle. "Trust in it. Time races ahead, my dear. Individuals tend to overlook things. However, we do not." The leader acknowledged with a nod. "We stand united and refuse to allow anyone to disrespect a member of our community." Emily sensed the gravity of his words envelop her, much like a dense shroud. "Are you suggesting—" "He is one of us," the leader interrupted, "regardless of the time that has passed." Jack shook his head, a subtle smile dancing on his lips. "I was surprised to see any of you here." The leader's confident grin disappeared. "You ought to have." The night air hung heavy with an unarticulated tension, a feeling that eluded Emily's understanding. Their stance, the intensity of their gaze directed at Jack, conveyed something deeper than mere respect. The connection remained unshaken by the passage of time. Emily took a deep breath. What comes next? Jack's gaze swept over the motorcycles parked neatly along the curb, his fingers twitching at his sides as if they were recalling a long-forgotten memory. The leader inclined his head. "It varies. Are you on your way back?" Jack's gaze deepened with a hint of shadow. "I'm uncertain if that still feels like my space." A youthful biker, adorned with tattoos snaking up his arms, took a step forward. "It always had been." Jack paused. The burden of years appeared to settle heavily upon him, yet Emily was able to perceive it. Beneath the layers of isolation, the specters of recollections lingered. He remained one among them. She advanced a fraction, her foot barely lifting from the ground. Perhaps it is time to cease the chase." Jack gazed at her, an enigmatic emotion dancing in his eyes. After a prolonged pause, he finally nodded. The leader grinned, dismounting from his bike with a confident air. "Then let us embark on our journey." In silence, Jack moved deliberately toward the closest motorcycle. Emily observed him as he glided his hand over the handlebars, his fingers pausing as though they had returned to a familiar place. With a fluid grace, he swung his leg over the seat. The movement executed, well known. The engine sprang to life beneath him, its sound merging with the chorus of others as the street resonated with a powerful growl of machines poised for action. Emily remained motionless as they drove off. The image of Jack riding next to his brother, a moment that would remain etched in her memory forever. Uncertainty loomed ahead, yet one truth stood unwavering. Jack found himself in the company of others. Emily lingered outside the diner, the fading rumble of motorcycles resonating in her mind long after they had vanished down the road. The night had taken on a new quality, weighty in certain aspects, yet buoyant in others. She let out a breath, attempting to unravel the chaos of everything that had just unfolded. She had stepped in to assist someone unknown, but Jack was far from an ordinary individual. He was a figure of significance, a person whose past extended beyond her wildest dreams. The way those bikers regarded him, the way their words flowed, suggested they had been anticipating his return for ages. A sudden blast of wind pierced through her, jolting her back to reality. She glanced back at the diner, suddenly aware of the profound emptiness that enveloped it. All the customers who had been present earlier had departed, and the clock on the wall indicated that it was beyond closing time. With a weary sigh, she stepped toward the front door to secure it, her ears catching the distant growl of an engine drawing near once more. Her breath caught in her throat as she pivoted, half anticipating the whole crowd to come back. Yet it was merely a single bike. Jack. He eased to a gentle halt in front of the diner, silencing the engine before swinging his leg off the seat. He lingered for a moment, gazing at the diner as though it were a new discovery. He then faced her, his expression a mystery. "You remained," he remarked. She arched an eyebrow. "This is my profession." He released a soft laugh, shaking his head slightly. "No, what I mean is, you didn't just walk away. Everything tonight could have been overlooked. One could have feigned ignorance." Emily gave a slight shrug. "That does not define me." Jack observed her intently for a prolonged moment before giving a nod of understanding. "I understand that now." She cast a fleeting look at his bike. "I was under the impression you had gone with them." He let out a breath, his fingers combing through his thinning, silver-streaked hair. "I did, but I found myself returning." A spark of intrigue ignited within her heart. "What is the reason behind this?" He paused for a moment, then slipped his hand into the inner pocket of his leather jacket. As his hand appeared, it clutched a small, folded piece of paper. He reached it out to her. With a delicate touch, she unfolded it, her fingers quivering ever so slightly. The script was jagged and inconsistent, as if penned in haste. Yet the words struck her with an intensity she hadn't anticipated. "After so long, I finally felt seen by someone. Truly recognized me. Thank you very much." She gulped, feeling a constriction in her throat. She gazed at Jack, her mind racing with unspoken words. "I lingered in the shadows of doubt, believing I had lost my significance," he confessed, his tone gentler than it had been. "I allowed the years to slip by, allow the world to continue its journey in my absence. Yet you brought me back to the realization that I still exist." Emily experienced a sudden tightness in her throat. "Every individual holds significance, Jack. Some individuals simply require a gentle nudge of encouragement." His smile was genuine and bright, instantly shedding years from his appearance. "Do you often remind others of someone?" She wore a sly grin. Each day, he let out a soft laugh, shaking his head in amusement. "In that case, you're on the right track." She glanced back at the note, her fingers tracing the ink, as if she were attempting to imprint the words into her mind. As she raised her gaze once more, Jack had already shifted his attention to his bike. "Where shall you venture?" she inquired. He positioned himself on the seat, pausing before igniting the engine. "Welcome home." Her chest constricted. "And where might that be?" He gazed at her, his eyes unwavering and brimming with an emotion she struggled to identify. "I suppose I'm on the verge of discovering the answer." With a final nod, he turned the key and the engine roared to life. The profound rumble resonated through the night once again. Yet, on this occasion it seemed lighter. Emily observed him as he rode off, fading into the shadows, with only the echo of his bike lingering in the air. After what felt like an eternity, clarity washed over her. Jack was finally moving towards the right path. Emily lingered outside the diner, the shadows deepening around her as Jack faded into the darkness. The crisp air brushed against her skin, and for the first time in ages, she sensed a change had taken place. Throughout the years, she encountered numerous customers, absorbing their myriad tales of hardship, perseverance, and renewal. Yet, there was something unique about Jack's narrative. It transcended his singular experience. It was about how life had an uncanny ability to unite individuals precisely when they needed it most. With a heavy sigh, she finally retreated back indoors. The diner lay in stillness, the soft buzz of the overhead lights the sole remnant of life within its walls. As she stepped behind the counter to tidy up for the evening, her thoughts lingered on the events that had unfolded. The manner in which those bikers rallied around Jack, treating him as if he were someone truly worth defending, and especially the way Jack had gazed at her before departing, as if she had bestowed upon him something he hadn't even known he was missing. As she finished wiping down the last table, the sound of an approaching vehicle caused her to stop momentarily. A low, persistent sound, quieter than a motorcycle, yet intriguing enough to pique her interest. She glanced at the window, her heart racing just a bit. A dark SUV glided into the parking lot. The headlights extinguished, leaving behind a profound stillness. Suddenly, the door creaked open, revealing a man who emerged into the light. He stood tall and broad-shouldered, clad in a leather jacket reminiscent of Jack's, yet distinctly newer. His boots thudded gently against the pavement as he neared the door. Emily's hold on the rag grew firmer. There was an unmistakable quality to this moment, a spark that set it apart. She had encountered a myriad of customers, yet this was an entirely different experience. The chime of the bell echoed softly as he entered the room. His gaze swept across the desolate diner, finally resting on her. His gaze held a certain familiarity, a quality that sent a shiver racing down her spine. "Are you Emily?" he inquired. Her voice was trapped in her throat, yet she found the strength to nod. "Absolutely. How may I assist you?" He released a breath, giving a subtle nod to himself. "You have already accomplished that." A flicker of confusion stirred within her chest. "I find myself perplexed." The man delved into his jacket, retrieving a modest envelope. He set it down on the counter before her. "Jack mentioned this." Her heart almost ceased to beat. "Is that you, Jack?" The gentleman inclined his head in acknowledgement. "He requested that I pass this along to you." With a deep breath, Emily cautiously reached for the envelope, her heart racing in her chest. The paper showed signs of wear, suggesting it had been cherished for quite a while. With meticulous attention, she unwrapped it, revealing a solitary sheet of paper. Her gaze swept over the text, and with every sentence, her breath hitched in her throat. "Emily, there are moments when life surprises you with an unexpected opportunity for redemption. You provided me with my own. I felt it was important to express my gratitude before departing. You brought to mind something I had overlooked. Such kindness continues to thrive, that individuals continue to perceive what lies beneath the surface. Your assistance that night went beyond mere help. You provided me with a reason to have faith once more. Once, I wandered without a sense of belonging, but clarity has finally graced me with the knowledge of where home truly lies. My home is with my brothers, my family, the ones who always believed in me. Thanks to you, I am finally returning to my rightful place. Words cannot fully express the depth of my gratitude. Allow me to express this thought. Thanks, Emily. Individuals like you are exactly what this world requires more of. Jack." Emily's fingers quivered as she set the letter down. She felt an unexpected ache in her chest. She had been aware that her actions that night held significance, yet she had not grasped the extent of that meaning. She gazed up at the man, trying to clear the moisture from her eyes. Where is he at this moment? The man smiled, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes, journeying alongside his loved ones. Emily released a breath she hadn't even noticed she was holding. A gentle, inviting smile blossomed on her lips. She had no further questions to pose. She was already aware. Jack found himself precisely in the right place at the right time. As the man turned to depart, Emily held the letter tightly against her heart. The evening began like any typical night, yet it concluded with an unforgettable twist. At times, a single gesture of compassion could transform a life entirely. And this evening, she held the evidence of that truth.